Welcome to the Defenders of Business Value, the podcast that helps business owners unlock the value they've built and exit on their terms. I'm your host, Ed Meisegland, and for the last 30 years, I've been helping business owners prepare, grow, protect, and ultimately sell their businesses. Whether you're a business owner, a buyer, or an advisor guiding others through the process, if you want to make your last deal your best one, you are in the right place. So let's get started. On Defenders of Business Value, we're always talking about existing businesses, how to protect what you build, grow it, ultimately exit out of it. But today's episode's a little bit different, and it is really important. I'm talking to Hunter Beale. He's the executive director of High School Hustle. And it's a growing movement where high school students actually launch businesses. Now, I do a little bit of work in the startup world over at Butler University, but this high school hustle is unbelievable. And when I tell you that, I want you to think like lawn care, car detailing, pressure washing, asphalt sealing. It's fast, hands-on, and shockingly effective. In just 1 year, right? They grew from 17 to over 2,000 students across Indiana. And the number is still climbing. But man, this isn't about just teaching kids to make money. It's an awakening of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? I think it's helping kids, especially these days, that lack confidence, that you can do this. You have the ability to earn. You have the ability to create a product, create a service, and go out and make a living, right? And this thing gives young people who don't always thrive in school a chance to win on their own terms. These are the future business owners, right? Our future clients, and quite frankly, the future defenders of business value. So enjoy my conversation with Hunter Beale of the High School Hustle. So Hunter, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Ed. I'm excited to talk as I saw you at Rally and presenting everything you know about acquisitions of businesses and all this stuff. You're a master of the art of what you do.
Well, I'm not certain about that, but by virtue of being in the industry longer than you've been alive, it kind of happens.
That's wisdom.
Well, at times, or tuition, whichever you think it is. I bumped into High School Hustle and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. Where I want to start is where you got into this. I mean, you're a young guy. How did you get your entrepreneurial start? And then how did you get into this?
So I started in the 5th grade. I was asking my dad, bothering my dad, I need the water bottle for my basketball game. I need the backpack. I need this. And he's like, okay, you're going to learn. As my dad was a business owner, and I was so lucky that he wanted to instill at me in a young age what it meant to kind of run a small little business. So me and my brother set out, and he said, listen, I'll give you guys a loan to buy a snow cone machine, and I'll get all the stuff, materials, supplies. I mean, at the 5th grade, I was learning cost of goods sold of like the plastic gloves we were using was a half a penny or whatever. And we would know based off of all this stuff. And we'd go to football games and we'd be marketing on Facebook. And then they're like, you need a vendor's license. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And then my dad's like, all right, don't worry about applying for that one then. Like, just go and run and learn and figure out as fast as possible and fail. So my dad would help us. We didn't have a car, obviously, so he would drive us around. And we did this at our local church. There was a massive flag football for the youth. It was hundreds upon hundreds of kids on like 6 fields, and it was gold. I mean, after it was $2 a snow cone. I still have a picture somewhere on my phone of me and my brother hustling. We make a couple $100 right then and there. Now that hustle would eventually fade, and I would get into a bunch of different stuff. I was lifeguard. I'm like, man, this sucks making $8 an hour. But I mean, you're sitting in a chair all day, so you can't complain really. And I just had that itch, and I'd go back to thrifting. I'd find stuff at Goodwill and I'd flip it. I mean, I would get limited edition stuff. There was Supreme clothing. It was high demand, low supply, and you try to get what you could. I remember in class be buying a bunch of stuff and then resell it on eBay. Like a fanny pack collab with North Face was was 160 retail, and then I resold it for like 360. And it was just supply demand. And I would learn that and would hustle through all this different stuff. And Jordans as well. If it was a high demand item, low supply, you get a raffle and you'd go to the Foot Locker, pick it up. And I'd go through a ton of stuff. And like I learned by doing and failing a ton at a young age.
That's wisdom now. Or in your case, that's tuition, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I'd go on hustling all this different stuff at a young age, and I would continue this thrifting all through college. I mean, I was not the smartest cookie in college, nor did I really care about it. I got like a 920 out of 1600 SAT score. So I would retake the SAT and get just enough by a hair. And I got accepted into Ball State for entrepreneurship and innovation with a minor in construction management, where I just soared. I mean, almost a 4.0 GPA. I mean, once I got into business and locked in, it was a game changer. And so I would do all that. And then I would go through the Hoare Fellowship 2-year program here in Indianapolis that I was so lucky to get. Worked for Jiffy Lube for 2 years. It was a really cool thing because, Ed, I was hired by a guy who just acquired the business 2 months before hiring me. It was his son-in-law. He bought it from his father-in-law. Jiffy Lube, 17. Now they're at 24 franchises in Indiana and Ohio. So we took a boomer business to a more modernized with technology. Like, it was so much fun. Like, we failed a ton and we just would increase bottom line year after year despite the economy. It was awesome.
And so how did you land where you're at?
So I met Scott Lingle, who's co-founder. On the side, I was also running a startup called Simpler Living. So I take upcycled shipping containers and put them up on Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com. So it was like a vacation, cool, unique rental. And so I was trying to raise capital for that. And the president of Hoare Fellowship, which I think like it's so important to have a network, and why I ended up where I had in Scott came to Steven, and I preface this because Scott says it all the time, really not ego led, but he said, all right, you got to introduce me to like the number one person that's like entrepreneur, go-getter in the Hoare Fellowship. And then that's how I got introduced. And Steven introduced me to Scott, and I pitched him my business. He loved it. And he said, hey, will you mentor for this program that I'm kind of starting to see if it has legs? I mean, we're just going to help high school students. And this was in 2024. So I was like, I was still working at Jiffy Lube running Simpler Living. And it was like 1 hour a week. Sometimes it'd be every other week at Inner City. And so I was like, man, this is awesome. And I'm surrounding myself with awesome people. So I was a mentor. And then they're like, hey, you know, students revenued like 40 grand that year, all in high school. And there was like about 10 or 15 businesses started. And it was like it was like a classroom of 20 students. It wasn't big. And so Scott and Peter Servaz, our other co-founder, kind of came together, and Peter was doing his own thing, something similar. He's like, what if we combine forces? And they're like, well, I don't want another job. They've built up companies and they're looking at giving back to the next generation of entrepreneurs. So they're like, we got to hire someone. And I told them, and I still have the email, his saying is ask for what you want and you'll end up getting advice. So I knew what he was doing when he slid the executive director paper on my table and said, what do you think of this? And I said, oh, it looks cool. Someone's going to have fun. He said, what do you think about doing it? I said, still have the email, slim to no chance. Don't want to be a nonprofit. Like, I want to be in for-profit. And like, I was trying to get commercial real estate, and God closed all those doors and made it like, it's a long story I won't get into, but it just made it ever so apparent that I needed to be at High School Hustle. And he made that really a reality. It says somewhere, you do not understand now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. And when I was standing at the Pacer Stadium in front of hundreds of people after years of scale up, then I understood what he was doing. I mean, 2,200 students this year and almost $1 million in student revenue. So it was just a true blessing.
Oh my gosh, you're such an impressive guy. And your dad, I mean, what a great guy to come alongside, see and help you establish what would that later become kind of this season's mission, you know? So you're talking High School Hustle, but ours was, we had a painting company and we worked construction. And so all the high school kids, when, you know, all the full-time guys they needed the full-time work. So if there wasn't enough work, all of us part-timers, we got shipped off. Well, we needed money. So somebody asked us to paint a house, and you're with your friends. I mean, you just have a great time. And so we were the naked painters. Your house is bare without us. And we went to all the local bars and we snuck in, and you see them in college, you know, those little tear off things. We would put that everywhere. And we had more work that summer, and we made so much money and had so much fun. Just talking to you, all I kept thinking is how much fun that this was back then.
That's awesome. So you started with painting with buddies and then in bars stapling the take this contact info if you need painting.
Yep. It was great. I mean, and all the stories that came out of it. And who doesn't want to help high school and college kids? You know, who doesn't
Yeah.
want to help them? So, I mean, now I will tell you, we did dump a half gallon of paint on a roof and used shoe polish on the shingles to make them black again. So you could, and I have no idea whether or not it's still there, but I wonder if they ever found out. And so, anyway, tell me the mechanics of High School Hustle. How does this work in the classroom? Tell me, the start to finish.
Yes. So the first thing is the mission we set out to do, which is awakening the next generation of entrepreneurs. And we think when you look at, I think stories are the best. So look at Warren Buffett. Where did he start? Newspaper routes. Mark Cuban selling trash bags door to door at the age of 12. Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, started with newspapers. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spandex, she started selling fax machines at a young age in high school. You look at on and on and on and on. I mean, all these entrepreneurs and everyone I met with, just like you, Ed, was like, what was your hustle? Oh, I was painting. I spilled a bucket of paint. Like, there's so many stories. And I think that's what Scott and Peter ultimately were thinking when they sold their businesses. They're like, what do we do? There's only so much pickleball and golf. And they went back to, they kept on hearing, where did it all start? And for Scott, it was lawn mowing and newspapers. For Peter, it was helping his dad who was defaulting on a mortgage. And he helped with high school parties, and he'd rent an abandoned warehouse and throw parties and made 30 grand profit and was able to help the family on the defaulting mortgage and kind of help save it. So it's like those stories are exactly what we're trying to build for the student that doesn't feel like they fit in. Like me, I mean, it was a nightmare popcorn reading. Like those students, there's more than just reading a textbook and taking a test and being institutionalized of like being 9 to 5. There's other options out there. And there's people that want to do that 9 to 5 completely fine. But for these awakening next generation of entrepreneurs, we're trying to make more of those stories. The Sam Waltons, and we know it'll be a byproduct. It's not like our goal of what we're doing. We know it'll be a byproduct. And whether they remember High School Hustle or not, that's not what's important. What's important is the impact of the butterfly effect to happen in the next decades of, they don't start a business, they go to college or whatever. And that seed was initially planted. So we're just trying to plant as many seeds. That's the objective of what we're doing. Now, what is the awakening? How do you guys do the awakening of the next generation of entrepreneurs? It's through three things. We have software. It's like the student hub where students log in, log their revenue, submit their proof. There's leaderboards. We gamify the hustle. And then we have incentives. We had a big award this summer. It was June 1st to August 1st, 100K, 10K to the highest revenue earners in the state of Indiana. And then there's minor incentives as well, or micro incentives. So if Ed cuts a lawn for $100 and provides proof, invoice, and proof of work, and we look at it and we see he can send us a link to something he needs on Amazon to level up. So we did hundreds of those grants this past year of you cut lawns, you need a weed eater, and you're like, hey, I'm going to charge $5, $10 more to edge the lawn or whatever. And so we buy that and ship it directly to their home or their school. If they get a parent sign off, then we'll ship it directly. And there's multiple incentives. We had social media competitions in the preseason. So the time frame is January through May, and there's micro incentives are happening. And the summertime is the playoffs. So like when they can focus full time on it, that's what they're going after and doing. So it's the software incentives and then mentorship. That's a big piece. When Ed has a bad back, he doesn't go to his brother-in-law who cleans pools business. He goes to a doctor. Same thing in entrepreneurship. We think you should learn through the people that have been there and done that and want to give back. Because there's a lot of people like Ed in the world that are like, I want to help the next generation, whether it be acquiring a business or whatever. And people have a heart for that, especially entrepreneurs when they see themselves in this kid. I was selling trash bags at 12 years old. I was spilling the paint on a roof in high school. All that stuff is what we're trying to do through those three things: software, incentives, and mentorship.
Where did the model come from? I mean, was this totally from the ground up, or has there been a model like this elsewhere?
So Scott and Peter, that's kind of where it initially started. In the behind the curtains, got to be working on me to get me in high school hustle to make this whole thing happen. Again, like I was kind of hinting at with Scott and Peter, they had this epiphany, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do when they sell their baby or they sell their company, and they had their this been moment. It's kind of like the alchemist story. If any of the listeners have heard the alchemist story, it's like you're trying to find this gold, and you realize once you find the gold or sell your company or do this, you realize. I think Jim Carrey says it. I wish everyone would get rich and famous and realize it's not the answer to your problems. That it's the journey in which to enjoy, and that's what we're trying to create more of those journeys. And it was Scott and Peter's journey of where it started. And like I was saying with their hustles, if you think they were trying to create another company, ask their wives. They're like, I'm done. We're good now. And God called on them to ultimately start this high school hustle movement for the next generation of entrepreneurs. And it was ground up development. So Scott started it in 2023. He was called through Shepherd Community, amazing nonprofit here. Jay Hine runs it, amazing community here locally in Indianapolis. He ran that in 2023. There was like 5 or 7 students. There was one student that came out of it, Alden Holmes. He ended up doing mobile bike repair. His dream was to be working for Tesla. And long story short, Tesla ended up hiring him and said, we love entrepreneurs. At the age of 17 years old, he's now at Tesla in Zionsville doing auto body work, which is just a blessing in his own eyes. And we're like, how can we create more of those stories, whether they become an entrepreneur or not? This is just more stuff on the resume that makes them stand out in a pile of resumes. And so that's the stories. And then 2024, we'd have about 20-ish students, so doubled up. Again, Scott was running this full time. That's when I got involved in 2024, and Peter wasn't yet involved. Scott and Peter are in a networking group and how this kind of all came together. But 2024, we had a lot more students that came out of it. David Arlano did about 25,000 plus in gutter cleaning and went full-time entrepreneur after high school, now doing asphalt sealing for Jiffy Lubes. At the age of 17, now he's 18 or 19 years old. So we're like, we can create more of these stories. Those are unicorns. I will mention that. So it's like, it's just to level up. The ultimate goal is how can we get them to make $100 and do that to thousands of people. Our goal is to do 1 million hustles by 2034, which a hustle is counted by Ed made $100 in lawn mowing. Ed could go mobile guard detailing and make $100. We count that as 2 for one person. So how can we create most of those? And that's the ultimate goal of making those stories and how these. And so Scott and Peter were like, all right, is there anything else out there? Because Scott was called into it by Jay Hine. He's like, hey, we're trying to do this entrepreneurship thing with Shepherd Community. Would you be interested in doing it? He did it. And then a year after was Elevate Indy in 2024. So we did it through there, looking for a bigger like room. And like, it was a really good collaboration with Elevate Indy, another nonprofit local, and Indy. Aaron Story, amazing person who's built that up for sure. And then we scaled it in 2025. So it was kind of like getting the foundation, and we still don't know. I would say like every business is like this. You don't know what you're doing, but you're figuring out what you're doing and doing it the best way possible, listening to the market. So that's kind of how the story unfolded. And Scott and Peter weren't trying to create this they were trying to look in as entrepreneurs. They were like, listen, we want to back someone who's already doing this. And the problem is there was like, there's pitch competitions, there's business plan workshops, there's like all this different stuff. There's a lot of theory. And they were like, listen, there needs to be more actionable entrepreneurship in this. That's how we learned. It's the failing. It's spilling a bucket of paint on a roof that you learn. It's failing that we want students to overcome. And it's repeated 365 times in the Bible. Do not fear. That's our core principle. And what we lead with is not fearing, because the lessons are in the failure. And the more you can get failures and tally them up, the more success you will have in the future. And that's why we created it. There was no actionable entrepreneurship of the lawn mowing, the gutter cleaning, power washing, doing nails, hair, all that stuff.
Well, the funny thing is that, you look at the universities around here. Like I help out in the entrepreneurship program at Butler, and they have the experiential learning. IU is doing it. Where I'm heading with it is that, to me, not only does it help you become entrepreneurs, it helps you not become entrepreneurs. This whole thing may not be your gig, right? And there is nothing wrong with learning early. At this stage, it's not for you. And your first loss is your least lost, right? So it's really interesting how much experiential learning there is. And now it's even into the high school. And to me, as you move upstream, it only makes better entrepreneurs, right? So you learn the foundation, and now where are you going to take it when you move into college, or if you don't even go to college? And that's, to me, what's so exciting about what you guys are doing. It's like, what a unbelievable time to be learning about entrepreneurship.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I was at Cutco and I remember going through that whole process in high school. I was going through Cutco and I ended up like leaving the last day of training because I felt like we had to read from this pamphlet, and I have a learning disability and I hate reading. And it's funny, I read hundreds of business books now. I was just reading this morning, but the part of it was I hated reading and they made us read from a pamphlet. And I was like, man, I'll never be in sales. I hate sales. And now all I'm doing is selling High School Hustle. At the time, it wasn't the thing. Maybe it was the approach or the method that I didn't like. But then I ultimately am now in sale. I'm constantly selling High School Hustle and being an influencer of what we created. So just like you said, it's like maybe not now, but maybe later. And like I thought sales was never going to be a thing for me.
And the funny thing with entrepreneurship is it's not for everyone. And people need to understand that that's okay. Again, this is just a means to make money. Like my daughter, I mean, my guest bathroom is her hair salon. She's coloring kids' hair and things like that when she's home from school. And it's like, how do you not get behind it and say, yeah, rock on? That she knows that at any time she could flip a switch and you don't have to stay in school. And candidly, I think what I'm most excited about is there's now community, now there's signal that, you know what, this is a viable path for you. So if going 4 years or, associate degree or whatever is not in the wheelhouse for you, that's okay. You can do this. And what parent or what community is not going to get behind somebody that's just put their head down and is taking the risk to earn?
Yeah, without a doubt. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's not easy. And as you scale up, there's different stages of business, and there's 100% different lessons to be learned in every stage of business.
Tell me about the parents. As I hear from, the younger associates in the office, I mean, I think that there's a lot more helicoptering. Do you get that same thing in your world or no?
I would say we haven't dealt with too many parents because the way we approached it and how we scaled up 140x this past year from 15 students to 2,200, just about 2,200 signups on our dashboard software, which is really just a back end website. We had these events, and especially like the Game Bridge, when we did the award ceremony, Governor Braun was there, as well as some heavy hitters in business that were there, some big developers and awesome donors that we've been so lucky to get. There was a ton of parents there, and we were talking to them, and they're like, this is so awesome. They're giving us feedback. We are very feedback led on parent, student, school side, because like that's our market. Like we don't want to build it not to be that way. So we haven't dealt with too much parents, but I will know on the back end, it's more or less like if you see High School Hustle, the first question you're asking is, well, it seems too good to be true. And like, is this a pyramid scheme, like a nonprofit? They're giving a bunch of money away. Like it's to realize that the story that came out of creating it is the most important thing. That Scott and Peter, which funded close to 90% of the funds of our costs, were funded by Scott and Peter. And like they believe in this, and we're looking at grants and sustainable funding for this cool new feature that we're dropping, which I think parents and students will love. You have 90% of students who look at you like deer in the headlights. They're like, I don't know my hustle. I don't know what I want to go create. I don't know this. I don't know that. And then you have 10% that have already had a hustle. They've been starting since cutting lawns, and we're just pushing those students further along and then transforming the students of really planting those seeds. So we created what is now going to be called like the hustle marketplace. So we'll have this really cool rundown of like the quick courses on mobile car detailing, lawn mowing, nails, thrifting, reselling items on eBay. And the ideal is to become a marketplace at which people in the community can post this. And just to be clear, we have background checks, we have the whole nine, and we try to be very protective on that end. But we're going to have basically a marketplace. And the ideal in the next couple of years is there'll be hundreds of options to be like, I don't know what to do, but I got this social media influencer and we're in talks, and I'm constantly, that's my focus right now, is to build this up right now in the off season to really, when you join, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just on this software to log revenue and this, that, the other. And I got mentors that we're meeting bi-weekly with, like this, that, the other. There's two exciting things that we're building right now is the mentor interface. So Ed can apply to be a mentor and say, I want Warren Central, I want this school, I want this school. And then kids hit you up and they can view your card, just like LinkedIn basically, and be like, oh, Ed is in this industry and he was painting. I want to start painting homes. I'd love to get lessons from him. So we're making these connections and online on our dashboard to be like in-house messaging changing. We're trying to be very protective over student data and all that stuff to keep it in-house and all that. And then the mentor interface. And then on top of that is that newspaper route model. I mean, when you look at the newspapers, you had a product, you had newspapers, you had a way to deliver it. Hey, Timmy, here's your routes, go shadow someone or whatever, learn it. And they collected cash. We're trying to reborn the newspaper model in mobile car detailing, lawn mowing, and make these quick routes for the students to ultimately learn from we were in talks to someone in Nashville, Tennessee, the number one dryer vent cleaner YouTuber, has 50K subscribers on YouTube, and him to be like, weekly meetings, talking with students, what's your biggest problems? Okay, what if you did this on door-to-door sales? And then we're getting like the mobile car detailing guy who has like 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, and like, it's easier said than done, closing them as we speak. And to build this up to be like, I'm talking to this guy that has a ton of subscribers, like to hype students up, and then to gamify the whole process through these incentives and awards is our ultimate goal, to really get this ball rolling and be like, it's cool to hustle. You're posting, people are laughing at you at school or whatever. Oh, you think you're a hustler, you're the next Mark Cuban. And it's okay to be different and to lead with not fearing, which is most important. But yeah, the parents are awesome. We've had a lot of online feedback as well.
And as I'm thinking about it, I mean, your kid's not necessarily competing against all the other kids for playing time and so on and so forth. You know what? This is them against themselves, right? That's life changing. And that's kind of my next question is, I got to imagine you've seen some, aside from the economic benefit, I have to assume that you've seen some really remarkable change in people's hearts, challenges that they might be experiencing, that now they have some newfound confidence. I mean, tell me about that, because I know there has to be stories about that.
Oh, yeah. So we were at physically, I think, around 12 to 15 schools in person with our program. And what it looks like January to May was like bi-weekly meetups, 3 to 4 club time for an hour. And the local entrepreneurs would help the students go over all their stuff. And one thing we really weren't the best at this year is to get more mentors, was our goal this year, mentors and these newspaper models. But I was going to all these schools, and I was full-time. I was traveling all over Indiana. I mean, we are in Shortridge, we're in Purdue Poly physically with like this program, and then the suburbs as well, Fishers, HST, Cathedral. We have a good mixture, Bloomington, all over the place on our physical locations. But then we also scaled up and went on the news and some other places. DECA sent an email to all their students and said, hey, if you want to compete, they're allowing you to be on the software. So we have technically 52 schools that are represented in Indiana that there's at least one person in the program. We were physically in anywhere from 12 to 15 schools. And I saw all those stories of the physical places I was going. And then at Gamebridge, when we had our big award ceremony and awarding the 10K to the top 10 for the pool of 100, I heard all the stories. And online, what we're doing is incentivizing in the social competitions to tag High School Hustle, which is kind of our marketing engine. When they get granted something, to be like, thanks High School Hustle for this, blah, 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 and post on social. So I get to see the stories, not only as much as I'd love to see the thousands of students in person, it's just not doable and scalable. And there's this social aspect of seeing these stories. And I have a really good in-house video editor that's been making these awesome videos of these stories that have been unfolding. And on our website, we have these stories and the turning points at which the students experience, which is very important. That the online and marketing that we're really good with, it looks like money, 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 and too good to be true. It catches people's eyes. But deep down, we want to go in depth with the students. And we're going to do that in the 2026 season, even better than the 2025 season. But the stories, I had one student that comes to mind. Now, he wasn't top 10 or anything like that. I saw him transform. Purdue Polytech, introverted kid, inner city, it's relatively a rough area. And I just remember so clear as day, had his headphones on. And I was like, man, that kid doesn't want to be here. It almost looks like, or is like waiting for a parent and just like came in this classroom or whatever. And later it was just crazy. It still blows my mind, because that was a true transformation when thinking about it. Like, he was nervous to talk, and then he got enough confidence to door knock, and winter to snow shovel. And on top of that, he was lawn mowing. And there were just so many learnings that he learned, and he was so hyped. It just like blew my mind of all the things that like just seeing that transformation. He made about a couple grand, but I'm like, this is amazing that this truly transformed this student into forever of what he does. He's going to go to Purdue. He's applying. He was taking the SAT. I remember just talking to him, and there's David Arellano as well. Like, he did power washing and stuff on the side. I had the ability to truly change his life and transform him. And there's nothing, no amount of money, nothing in the world that can do that. That feeling that I have, that's words can't describe, on that transformation to a student that 25,000, now he's creating his own business in somewhere around the ballpark of 6 figures with asphalt ceiling. And I'm like, I changed his life. Inner city, and there's suburbs, and we're in all areas. You know, we're setting sail, and wherever we go with the program, we're not necessarily focused on inner city or suburbs or rural. We want to do all of it, and we want to help as many people as possible. And there's so many stories. It just blows my mind.
The economic benefit is one thing, right? But the life lessons that they're learning and the confidence that perhaps they didn't have before, or the crappy place they're in. And now all of a sudden you have an entirely different place that you can go to do your thing. I sit here and I'm like, man, just life-changing stuff, man. That is so, so good. I know I'm pushing up on time and I want to be sensitive to it, but what does this thing look like? What's your 1, 3, 5-year goals?
2034, we want 1 million high school hustles by the end of 2034. We're currently at several hundred hustles. And again, it's if they make $100 when we tally it up and make it count. But that is the long-term goal. And I think right now for next year's goal is we were surface level and scaled 140x. Now the question is, like, can we go more in depth? We were very surface level. I think we fell short on the mentor side. The ratio was roughly 1 mentor to 20 students. It just wasn't doable. And so we need mentors that are willing to give their time while also at the same time changing and impacting lives, but also increasing their lives. And I think one of the unique things that we provide is this ecosystem of other entrepreneurs. And we have these quarterly and monthly meetups that have been really successful on how I built this, stories that we want locally happening in their communities. And we have like Quinn Ricker, Jet Access, one of the biggest jet companies here in the Midwest, and like giving us how I built this story. And there's a ton of others like that. And what's interesting about becoming a mentor is, like, the students are a focus, but it's crazy to hear the mentor stories as well. And as we continue to bolster up the mentors for 2026, and that being one of the big goals, it was transformational to see that someone quit their job as a mentor and ended up acquiring a business, a janitor business, and then got rehired, but ended up buying a janitor. There's so many stories. And I found my first commercial real estate deal. I met a guy through High School Hustle. He's like, hey, I'm going to do this retail strip in Noblesville. Are you interested? Like, me and him clicked. And so we became business partners in this deal on the side of me running High School Hustle. And there's just so many of, like, when you put a lot of A players and smart-minded people together, it's crazy. And when you give, the what comes back is insane. So the big goal is to get more mentors and enhance what we've already built for this coming season. And our big goal for this coming year is to get 2,500 or 5,000 hustles this coming year. So to really scale up and get students running with it.
So your ask is for more mentors and more awareness, right?
Yeah, and they could apply on highschoolhustle.org, and the students can hit them up. We were mentor approach on how we got into schools last year of like, hey, I want this at my school where I'm alumni from, or where my kids go to, or whatever. And that's what we really want, of like, we want you to benefit and your kids to benefit as well. It's like, wow, I want Timmy or I want Susie, my daughter, to start a business, and why not change other students' lives while trying to do this and implement the High School Hustle program at their school, their local school. And then also the students that we have in-house are starting to build this cycle of building it themselves, as we've gotten a little bit of momentum on the news and some other places to get them to recruit mentors as well locally, of hitting up people and stuff like that. So it's a really cool opportunity. There's a lot, and it may be confusing the audience of everything we built, but it's going to be even bigger and better in 2026, and working really hard to make it so.
Yeah, well, as you know, entrepreneurs tend to help other entrepreneurs because they've all been through it. And so it's just, to me, what can I do to help? As far as, certainly awareness, but just tell me. I mean, I'm happy to come alongside, do whatever we can, whether it here in the shop or me personally, because again, I do think this is bigger than just the service that you provide the student, you know?
Oh, 100%. I think like what's the most interesting thing is Scott was in corporate world, or co-founder was in corporate world until the age of 44. And also the Starbucks founder didn't start his company until he's like 50 or 60. KFC didn't start his business until he's 60. Sam Walton didn't end up creating Walmart until he was in his 50s. So Scott he called it the golden handcuffs. He kept on getting promoted and this, that, the other. And then he took the leap of faith when he was 44 years old and created two businesses that ended up selling to private equity, insurance, technology stuff. And what was interesting about that is that story versus Peter's story. Peter started his startup right out of college and sold the Ford Motor Company, and he's retired stay-at-home dad at the age of 35 through that process. So what's interesting is in the next couple decades of what it looks like of that initial seed that was planted and it grew over time.
As far as those seeds, I mean, the real interesting thing is that the acceleration of technology layered on top of entrepreneurship is really going to be an interesting play in the next decade. You don't need age, right? You can learn in a hurry with AI these days, and you can add value to a company or start a company real in a hurry, because just by virtue of having that mindset of an entrepreneurial iteration and, you know, keep testing and keep improving yourself or the service you provide or the product you provide. So, man, it's a good time to be you, that's for sure.
I guess as an outsider, sure, you can say that. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I love what I do and I can't complain. It's been a ton of fun. God's blessed us, and I know he'll continue. He'll bless us. It's kind of in a season of like, don't know what's going to happen, but working as hard as we can in all hours a day.
Yeah, but what's the adage? Bless people, right?
Yeah, there we go. Amen.
Amen to that. Well, Hunter, man, it has been unbelievable. As I told you before, you were so impressive, and I mean, you delivered. I so appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Defenders of Business Value. If today's episode helped you think differently about building or selling a business, follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if you want to become a more informed, confident owner, the one who knows how to grow, protect, and eventually exit at maximum value, subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in the show notes. And if you're ready to talk about your next deal, connect with me on LinkedIn. So until next time, we'll see you soon.